Mary and Thomas were married in a joyous celebration that brought the entire village together. Their love grew stronger with each passing day, and soon Mary discovered she was pregnant. The couple was overjoyed and eagerly prepared for the arrival of their first child. They spent their days making plans for the future, filled with hope and excitement. As the months passed, Mary's belly grew, and with it, her anticipation. Finally, the day arrived when she felt the first pangs of labor. With Thomas by her side, Mary gave birth to a beautiful baby boy they named Brian. He was a healthy, happy child with a bright smile that melted their hearts. They loved him dearly and cherished every moment of his early years. Brian grew up surrounded by love and care, his parents doting on him as he took his first steps and spoke his first words. However, just after Brian celebrated his second birthday, he fell seriously ill. His parents, frantic with worry, took him to the village doctor, who diagnosed him with polio. The doctor explained that Brian had not received the polio vaccination, which was crucial in preventing the disease. Mary and Thomas were devastated by the news. The once lively boy began to lose strength in his legs, which grew thin and weak. As time went on, it became clear that Brian would never be able to walk again. Yet, despite this heartbreaking reality, Mary and Thomas refused to give up on their son. They remained strong, determined to provide Brian with the best life possible. After consulting with doctors and specialists, they decided to buy a small, sturdy wheelchair for Brian. It was a gift of freedom and mobility for their son, allowing him to move around the house and the village with more ease. The wheelchair became an essential part of Brian's life, and though he could not run or play like the other children, he never let his condition dampen his spirit. As Brian approached his 4th birthday, his parents decided it was time for him to start school. They wanted him to receive an education, to learn and grow just like any other child. After searching for a place that could accommodate his needs, they found a small private primary school in a nearby town that was willing to accept him. On his first day of school, Brian's parents were filled with a mix of pride and anxiety. They watched as he wheeled himself into the classroom, his face full of determination. They knew that the journey ahead would be filled with challenges, but they also knew that Brian had the strength and resilience to face them all. As Brian began his schooling, the reality of his condition became more apparent. From the moment he wheeled himself into his first classroom, the atmosphere changed. His classmates stared at him with wide eyes, their curiosity quickly turning into disdain. Whispers filled the room, and before long, the other children began to treat him differently, not with kindness or compassion, but with cruelty. Every day in class, Brian was met with sneers and harsh words. His classmates would taunt him, calling him lame and questioning the value of his education. What good will studying do for someone who can't even walk, they would jeer. But despite the constant ridicule, Brian remained steadfast. He knew that education was his path to a better future, and he refused to let the cruel words of others deter him. Brian immersed himself in his studies, focusing on his lessons and assignments. He ignored the laughter and the mocking, letting the words roll off him like water. His determination paid off, and when it came time to take the national exams at the end of primary school, Brian excelled. His hard work and dedication earned him a spot at a mixed secondary school, a new chapter in his educational journey. However, as Brian transitioned to secondary school, the challenges only intensified. The students at his new school were older and, in many ways, harsher. The ridicule he faced in primary school paled in comparison to the torments he endured in secondary school. His classmates openly laughed at him whenever he raised his hand to ask a question in class. They would roll their eyes, muttering cruel comments under their breath. Lunchtime became a dreaded part of the day for Brian. The school dining hall was a long way from his classroom, and by the time he wheeled himself there, most of the food was gone. His table mates would often take his portion, knowing he would arrive late and be unable to stop them. Brian's stomach growled with hunger, but he refused to let them see his pain. Instead, he focused on his studies, determined to rise above the bullying and succeed. One day, as Brian was enduring another difficult day, something unexpected happened. A new girl transferred to his school. The news of her arrival spread quickly, and soon, the class was abuzz with curiosity. When the class teacher walked in with the girl by his side, everyone fell silent. "Class, we have a new student joining us today," the teacher announced. "Her name is Sophia, and she has transferred from another school. Please make her feel welcome." Sophia stood at the front of the classroom, her eyes scanning the room. Brian, sitting in his wheelchair at the back, watched as she took in her new surroundings. There was a moment of silence before the class erupted into polite applause, welcoming her to their group. But Brian couldn't help but wonder, would she be like the others, or would she see him for who he truly was? As the bell rang for break, students eagerly jumped from their seats and rushed outside to enjoy the fresh air. Brian, however, remained at the back of the classroom, struggling to maneuver his wheelchair. The chairs around him, haphazardly pushed back by his classmates, had created a barrier that prevented him from moving forward. He tried to push them aside, but his efforts were in vain. Sophia, who had been quietly observing the scene, noticed Brian's predicament. Without hesitation, she walked back into the classroom while everyone else hurried outside. As she approached Brian, she began moving the chairs out of his way, clearing a path for him to wheel himself forward. The other students, noticing what Sophia was doing, exchanged bewildered looks. "Why are you helping that lame boy?" one of them sneered. "He's not worth your time." Sophia paused for a moment, meeting the eyes of the student who had spoken. But she said nothing, choosing instead to focus on helping Brian. With the obstacles now removed, she gently pushed Brian's wheelchair, guiding him out of the classroom and into the warm sunlight. They found a spot where the sun's rays bathed them in warmth, and Brian finally felt the breeze on his face. As break time ended, Sophia stayed with Brian, making sure he was back in the classroom before the bell rang. The other students watched with growing resentment, their whispers turning into a chorus of anger. At lunch, Sophia once again came to Brian's aid, helping him to reach the dining hall on time. She guided him through the lunch line, ensuring he had a meal before sitting down together. This act of kindness did not go unnoticed by their classmates. Whispers of disapproval filled the air as students watched Sophia and Brian eat together. "She's just as strange as he is," they muttered among themselves. The more Sophia helped Brian, the more the other students began to turn against her. But she remained unfazed, her resolve unshaken by their hostility. Sophia knew the power of patience and kindness. She encouraged Brian to stay strong, to focus on his studies, and to ignore the cruelty of their peers. "You are more than their words, Brian," she would tell him. "We will rise above this, and one day, they will see our strength." Together, Sophia and Brian navigated the challenges of secondary school. Despite the continuous hate and the growing isolation from their classmates, they persevered. They spent countless hours studying, determined to excel in their exams and prove their worth. And when the results of the national exams were announced, their hard work paid off. Both Sophia and Brian passed with flying colors. As they prepared to leave secondary school behind, a new chapter awaited them. They had both been accepted into the same university, ready to embark on the next stage of their education together. The journey had been difficult, but their friendship had become a source of strength, helping them to overcome the obstacles in their path. With their bags packed and their futures ahead of them, Sophia and Brian entered the gates of the university, side by side. They knew that challenges still lay ahead, but with each other's support, there was nothing they couldn't face. At university, Sophia and Brian quickly settled into their new lives, just as they had in secondary school. They attended lectures together, studied in the library side by side, and leaned on each other for support. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day, and they became inseparable. Sophia's presence continued to be a source of comfort and strength for Brian, while his resilience inspired her. Every weekend, Sophia made it a tradition to wheel Brian around the university campus. They explored every corner, from the lush gardens to the quiet, sandalwood paths that wound through the trees. These moments became their sanctuary, a time to relax and enjoy the world around them. They laughed together, shared their dreams, and talked about the future they wanted to build. Years passed, and their dedication to their studies paid off. They both excelled in their courses, and when the time came to graduate, they walked, or, in Brian's case, wheeled, across the stage with pride. The day was filled with joy and celebration as they received their diplomas, marking the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. After graduation, Sophia and Brian each secured permanent government jobs. Their hard work and determination had not gone unnoticed, and they were offered positions that aligned with their skills and passions. With their careers taking off, they began to think more seriously about their future together. It wasn't long before their thoughts turned to marriage. Their love had grown into something deep and unwavering, and they knew they wanted to spend the rest of their lives together. So, with excitement and anticipation, they began planning their wedding. The day of their wedding was a celebration of love, resilience, and the bond they had forged through years of shared experiences. Surrounded by friends and family, Sophia and Brian exchanged vows, promising to support and cherish each other for the rest of their lives. As they were pronounced husband and wife, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Their journey had been filled with challenges, but together, they had overcome every obstacle. Now, as they embarked on this new chapter as a married couple, they knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together, hand in hand, just as they always had.